Link Up. It's certainly nice to have you join us today. You know, back in 2020, after the world first heard about this new pandemic, we went into our lockdown in March. And here at the CBC, we wanted to find a way that we could get information out there, keep in touch with the rest of the world, and also to keep our people at home entertained and informed. And out of that, the Link Up was created. So this month we are celebrating our second birthday. And yes, we're still in a pandemic, but we're certainly looking at hopeful times ahead as we face various entertainment events and so on opening up. They just had the Oystins Festival, and of course we're in the season of emancipation. So there are hopeful times ahead, but cautious. But I just wanted to acknowledge happy birthday to the Link Up, and thank you so much for being our faithful viewers and telling me what you like and that you watch it every Thursday, and for that I'm grateful. We have a highly informative show for you today, as usual. I get the opportunity to chat with Dr. Dean HERTZLER. Now, Dr. Dean is a pediatric neurosurgeon, pediatric cleft and craniofacial at Joe DiMaggio's Children's Hospital in South Florida. And today he's going to be chatting with us about epilepsy. I have some members in my family who have epilepsy, and it's still an unknown area for a lot of us. So we're going to shed some light on that, and also new technology which can perhaps lead to less suffering. We also connect today, because our theme is making connections, with South Africa and our friend, insurance executive MBALI KHUMALO, and her colleague and friend Prudence Tipe. And we're going to look at their COVID journey and also their celebrations for Freedom Day. Now that's next week, April 27th, but we're doing it today because we're not going to be on air next week because of Heroes Day and our celebrations, which will be live here on CBC TV 8. And an old friend, personal friend, musician and entertainer, SKUNG, Alleyne. He's going to be releasing a new album, and it's an anthology of some of his really great music. And so we're going to chat with him about that today. And because it's the season of emancipation, I thought it would be only right that we share that chat I had last week with Senator John King. So some of you had missed it, and it's a great overview of the season to come. As I said, it's highly informative. Perhaps you might want to sit with a notepad and a pen if you like, and join us as Dr. Dean HERTZLER comes up after the break. around 50 million people worldwide have epilepsy, making it one of the most common neurological diseases globally. The epilepsy mortality rate in Latin America and the Caribbean is 1.04 per 100,000 inhabitants, and it's higher than the 0.50 per 100,000 inhabitants in the United States and Canada. It is estimated that up to 70% of people living with epilepsy could live seizure-free if properly diagnosed and treated. I remember my cousin having epilepsy, well, she still does, and I remember it was very, very scary as a bystander to watch her having seizures as a child, and being children together and not wanting to excite her, not knowing what caused it. And years later, you know, we still don't know quite a lot about epilepsy. So we have with us this morning Dr. Dean HERTZLER. And Dr. Dean is a pediatric neurosurgeon at the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital in South Florida. And welcome to the Link Up, Dr. Dean. It's nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me here.
Now, perhaps we could begin with, you know, an overview of what exactly is epilepsy, what causes it, what are the symptoms, what should parents look out for when they first see these particular signs in their children?
Sure. So the brain works through electrical signals that cover over the surface of the brain. Mm-hmm. And that's what sends our signals for movement and for speech and for function. And epilepsy happens when there's an area of the brain that sends out electrical signals when it shouldn't, and sort of going haywire, if you will, of an area that's sending too many signals, and it can spread to the rest of the brain and causing what we often think about when we see seizures, the grand mal seizure, where someone's on the ground that is jerking around. And that's what people most commonly think about when they think about the physical manifestation of seizures. Mm-hmm. Now, there's also many more manifestations. Sometimes people will have absent seizures, where they will just blank out. Their body won't move, but the way the seizure progresses through their brain and electrical firing, their body and brain sort of shut down, they just sit there. Sometimes it may be that they have memories or they have other things that happen with their seizures. So there can be a lot of different types, but it's very disruptive both for function in normal life as well as learning and memory in children. So if they're having seizures all the time, it's very difficult for them to develop normally and to learn normally. And so one of the things that has, you know, worked very well over the last 50 years is the development of more and more medications that can treat the epilepsy. They can sort of quiet down the firing electrical signals that are coming from an area that's not working correctly to and stop it from sending signals to other sides of the brain. But it doesn't always work. And that's where sometimes surgery can come in. If there's an area of the brain that we can trace that the signals are coming from, sometimes those areas offer operative intervention, maybe an area that we can disconnect or that we can cut out. And not all epilepsy is that focused. Sometimes it's occurring everywhere and it's not surgically addressable. But as we're getting more and more knowledge of lesions or things causing epilepsy, or sometimes we're able to surgically address them.
Now, I remember as a child, as a teenager with my cousin, and we're talking back in the 70s, so I'm a dinosaur, okay? We would notice that her seizures, the worst ones, occurred on Sundays. And we couldn't work it out why until we realized that we used to go to the club on Saturday nights and the disco ball, those strobe lights or whatever, seemed to have an effect on her that then it seemed to trigger, you know, and we had to do this because there weren't manuals and so on telling you that this is what you should look out for and this is what you shouldn't do. You had to so is there any knowledge about what causes epilepsy? What causes this misfiring?
So that is an excellent example of Like there's some movies that have warnings now because it's known that people who are prone to it, the flashing lights can sort of set up a pattern in their brain and can set off the seizure. And so there's a lot of different causes of epilepsy. Sometimes it can be from a trauma. It can be damage to the surface of the brain and now the surface is not firing normally. It can be an infection that can cause a disruption of the brain. It could be how the brain is formed, so something congenital, something that happened in utero or just as the brain formed, and the brain in that area didn't form correctly. And still, even now, there are moments where we don't exactly know. Now, there's ways we can find out. We try to figure out where the epilepsy may be coming from. One of the ways is we just got a new super high resolution MRI scanner. And so we can see much more detailed patterns of the brain. There's an area that doesn't look normal. Is it scarred? Does it show changes? We also put electrodes over the brain on the skin, and that can also let us know, look at the firing pattern of all the nerves of the brain and figure out there's an area that's not firing correctly. And now we also, and our new intraoperative MRI helps us do this even more precisely, we'll actually put little electrodes deep into the brain surgically. And it can actually monitor the firing of the brain in a very deep pattern of the brain in areas we couldn't monitor before. And sometimes that's enough to tell us, okay, the seizures are coming from this area, and there may be a way that we could disconnect that to stop the seizures. Right. So we're getting more and more knowledge of sort of how to figure out where the seizures are coming from.
What do you see when you get that MRI, the new technology that you're talking about? What do you all see when you look at the scans?
So we can see the little folds of the brain, and some of the folds of the brain that were hard to see on lower resolution, we can see them with more clarity, and we can say, okay, this side doesn't look like the other side. It's different. It should be symmetric. This side looks like there's really tiny bit of scar there, or it's sort of, we call it sclerotic, where it's scarring in or there's changes. And so that high resolution MRI allows us to see those areas better and say, okay, this lesion or this abnormality we can now see on this MRI also correlates and aligns with what we're seeing on the electrical firing pattern. Right. And that gives us the confidence to go in and say, if we take this area out, if it's safe to take this area, that can sometimes stop the seizures.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to show some pictures of Dr. Dean with some of his, with a young patient. And we're going to ask, because we're nosy like that, you know, what exactly is he doing and what is he testing for when we come back. We're chatting with Dr. Dean HERTZLER, and Dr. Dean is a pediatric neurosurgeon at the Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital in Southern Florida, and we're taking a look at epilepsy. And I know that many of my viewers have varying tales to tell. I remember someone saying that during a seizure they would always walk with a spoon to ensure that the patient didn't harm their tongue. And so before I, look at the pictures that you had shared, some of the symptoms, are there symptoms that are similar to all epileptic patients, or are there varying types? And what should we as parents look out for if we've got a toddler and so on, you know, who might be showing signs of some types of seizures? Just to underline for some of our viewers who might not know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we all think the common thing we see in movies and shows that when someone has a seizure, they sort of fall over and they're laying and twitching on the floor and out of control. And that's a common type. That's we call it the grand mal seizure. And that's where the whole body and the whole brain is being affected by the seizure. But there are other types too. There's some where only one side of the body is affected. It might only be the arm. And sometimes after it's affected, that side might be temporarily paralyzed. The person comes back from the seizure, but that area of the brain has to sort of recover, and it doesn't work for a little while, then it comes back. And sometimes there's the ones we call absent seizures. And those sometimes are missed for a long period of time, where maybe a child's at school and then they just disappear. And it may happen quite a bit, where they're still sitting up, they're still looking forward, but for a period of a few seconds or a minute, they're just not there. And their brain is having a seizure, and they're not getting new information, they're not retaining things, and then they come back. And those are, I think that's one of the easiest types to miss. And if you see episodes where a kid is just staring, and you can't get their attention and they're not there, that's definitely something to get evaluated to make sure they're not having a seizure that's not the common type that we think about.
Okay, so I noticed some of these then in my child. I come to you know, make an appointment to see you with the child. What then happens?
So we would probably have you see one of we have some very good seizure neurologists that sort of do the medical management at first. So we would have you see them, and then they would get an EEG, or electroencephalogram. And that's where they put little electrodes on the surface of the skull, and that allows us to monitor the brain waves of the firing. We'll actually get tons of little tracings that go up and down, and we look for ones that look normal, and we look for ones that are spikes that look abnormal to the normal thing. And that'll tell us, are we seeing signs where there's a brain abnormality? Or we'll also watch, we may admit you to the hospital and hook you up to all the electrodes with a video camera, and then watch you for 24 hours or longer, and just see if we experience a seizure, do we see a misfiring that also shows a seizure happening on the brain waves. And it helps us show where it's happening and the best way to treat it. It can also help us figure out what medications are better. And then over time, if the medications aren't working and we get the high resolution MRI, then that can show us, is there a lesion or is there something that we should surgically treat to try to remove to stop the seizures. So it's sort of a stepwise pattern where we start evaluation, EEG, and then escalate as we go.
Okay. Now, we have a photo of you with one of your young patients, and he's looking at you rather intently. Well, this is when, you know, you're saying hi, I guess, you know, but there's one where he's looking at you very intently, like if to say, okay, what is he doing? So what are you doing here? What are you checking for?
So that is actually checking for the function of his cerebellum, the bottom part of the brain. And that helps our coordination. And so actually what I'm having him do is go back and forth, touching my finger, back and forth, and then moving it around. And it shows, is his cerebellum allowing him to coordinate his movement to come smoothly touch the finger? Or is it kind of wavy, or is he unable to find it? And so he's focusing to sort of figure out to follow my finger as it moves and touch it back and forth.
Okay. And in the other one, I think you have his leg. I think we have that one? Yes. His foot.
Yeah, so there I'm checking for some of the reflexes. And so does he have any abnormal tone in his legs? Does it, when we move the ankle, does it just kind of go? Or does it quiver back and forth when I put pressure on it, showing abnormal spastic tone or reflexes?
I see. I notice he has a little sister. Is epilepsy hereditary by any chance? Any studies have shown this?
There's some genetic mutations and some other things that there can be families that have epilepsy that runs in them. Most epilepsy is sporadic, that it just happens from an event, a trauma, infection. but there are segments that do run in families.
What about side effects, Dr. Dean, and their impact on young ones who are developing physically?
So epilepsy can have a profound impact on development because every time you have a seizure, you're not making the memories around that event. You're not forming the things. So if they're happening at school, they're happening other times, and some kids are having 100 seizures a day, especially the absent ones and things. And so then it's really hard to learn things and make memories and develop because your brain never has that time to rest and make those memories and learn. And so that's where taking the medication where you can stop them allows normal development as much as possible for that child.
Right. And this new equipment that they have, that, you know, the MRI, the intraoperative one, can it help the older epileptics as well, you know, or, you know, is it too late?
It can. No, it really can. We use it for adults as well too. Adulthood's not too late either. And it's really an amazing piece of technology where we can do the surgery, where we can set things up so they're laying on the table, we have them all ready to go. We may be putting an electrode deep into the brain to test, or we may be trying to take out a particular area of the brain for epilepsy. And then when we're ready, the doors of the room open and this huge thousands of pound MRI machine moves on rails in the ceiling and comes into the operating room. And it actually comes over the patient, and we can do the MRI scan while the brain is open, while they're on the operating room table, get the picture to see what we need to see, and then it moves out of the room and we can continue the operation. And then if we have another question, we can bring it back and check where the electrode is at to make sure it's where we want it to be. It really allows us in real time to take direct pictures during surgery of the brain and see where we're at and if we've gotten everything out that we want to. It's an amazing piece of technology.
It's a game changer then, I would say, in the whole fight. So what has it shown you or taught you that you didn't learn in medical school?
So when I went to medical school, this wasn't available.
I can imagine.
I can tell by my hair that I'm not as young as I should be. It enables us to sort of see a higher resolution and to see it in real time. So both for tumor surgery to make sure we get out all the tumor, for epilepsy to make sure we're at the exact right spot for the lesion, or that we're putting our electrodes exactly where we need them to be, and then we can confirm that right there on the table and not have to get a scan another time and then come back to fix something that's not exactly how we want it to be. It allows us to be extremely precise in how we're addressing these problems.
Have you ever been on time, in place, on location to actually witness the patient having a seizure?
Yeah. No, we see that in the hospital.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll be going by the room while they're on their video EEG, and we can see it happening as we see EEG leads change with the seizure.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And I can only hope that, you know, the technology gets even better, that because it's a scary thing to watch. You feel so helpless, you know. So I thank you so much for joining us. Yes, go ahead.
No, I was saying, I think we're at a real exciting part of we're getting better and better at both defining the seizures and treating them. It's going to be very exciting in the next 10 years.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to, you know, sharing this information with my cousin. I'm sure that, you know, she's going to be quite thrilled to know about this. But you can live with it, but it's the quality of life that is the thing, you know. So thank you very much for sharing this with us, and we certainly wish you all the best. Please stay safe, and we'll connect again sometime.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Chatting with Dr. Dean HERTZLER, who is the pediatric neurosurgeon, pediatric cranio, and Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital in South Florida, bringing us some information on new technology that's out there that can aid and assist in epilepsy. And if you know someone who's an epileptic, you could perhaps, look it up online and see what's out there to assist. It can only get better. We're going to be back as we make connections in South Africa when we come back. Over the last 2 years, since the Link Up started, we've made connections all around the world. And one of those connections who's become a friend is MBALI KHUMALO. No, MBALI is an insurance executive in South Africa. And it's so nice to see you this morning, MBALI. How are you? It's good to see you.
I'm very well, thank you. And how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, thanks. And
Happy birthday. I heard that it's your birthday.
It's the birthday of the Link Up. Yes, we're 2 years old today. Well, not today, this week. But yeah, we're certainly thrilled that, we made an impact and we're still continuing. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So how has your COVID journey been? I know that the last time we spoke, there were lots of things happening to you and your family. How are you?
I'm actually good. I actually contracted COVID as well. It's not only my family this time. So
wow.
In December, we had our 4th wave, which was quite bad in terms of spreading, but it wasn't as severe. So I also got COVID then, but it was just managing it at home and doing the right things and just taking medication. And it was actually self-medication because it was a family member that tested, but we were all presenting the same symptoms in the house, and we just self-diagnosed, and we did what we need to do if you were positive.
Right.
But looking back, most people experienced the same thing. There was a number of people that got infected, very close people and people that I know at a distance that got infected as well in December. But the good news is that although we didn't reach our herd immunity, it looks like the excess death is an indicator that more people got COVID. Remember our last discussion that deaths were very high. Like right now, the COVID are sitting at 100,000. But if you look at an average number of deaths expected based on the trends over the years, there are deaths, 306,000 deaths that were not counted as COVID, but they are over and above the average number of deaths expected at any given time.
Now, I see that we're being joined by your friend and colleague, Prudence Tipe. Prudence, welcome. Nice to have you join us today.
Thank you, and I believe it is morning or day
Yes.
in your part of the world.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So good day to your viewers too.
Thank you very,
And
very
thanks for having
much.
me.
You're welcome. MBALI has been a part of the Link Up's journey over the last few years, and so we've, when we needed to touch base and to find out how South Africa was doing, she was always someone that we could depend. So it's nice to have you join us. Would you like to share a little bit of your COVID journey with us?
Yeah, and it's very interesting that MBALI just indicated that, she's had a few encounters as far as family and even herself is concerned. I mean, I'm just coming out of a COVID situation. My son just contracted COVID.
Wow.
And he just got out of isolation today, actually. And the past 2 years have been very difficult. So I have been I was in the insurance industry, but more on the life, and funeral side. So you can just imagine the impact that COVID had as far as that space was concerned, in the sense that it affects your mortality rate, it then increases your claims. But more importantly, I guess, the psychological impact thereof,
Yes.
one cannot quantify, and that we saw not only with the communities that we dealt with, we saw it within the communities, but we also saw it with our constituencies. And by that I mean the financial advisors, who were the people that then, had to go out and sell, but whose customers were starting to claim, and also whose customers were starting to die. So,
Wow.
I think it was a difficult period for the industry, both from the claim, from a claim perspective. Mortality rates were quite high, but I think the thing that we had not envisaged was the psychological impact of COVID. And I
Yes.
think we're still going to see this for many, years to come, because I think people are still reeling from the impact of this. When people are losing families, and you lose 3, 4, 5 people at a go, and you have to then bury them within a period of 24 hours or 26 hours, you don't necessarily have time to grieve, because then the next person dies, the next person dies, and the next person dies. And while all of that is happening, you're losing colleagues, you're losing friends. I think the effect is
Yes.
just more impactful than we realize.
Yeah, that's something that we've discussed a lot here on the Link Up, the psychological impact of COVID, something that, that we really and truthfully didn't take into consideration. And actually people have been describing it as having PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because now that they're going back into the community to events and so on, and realizing that they're nervous. They're nervous to interact with others. Some people actually use the word scared, and you get those symptoms, so it's something that we're going to have to, as Prudence said, take a look at over the long haul. But right now they're talking about living with COVID. And so how is your industry taking that into consideration, and how are you all perhaps structuring your plans, your that sort of thing with your clients? How are you sitting down and talking about planning for a life where you're in a pandemic?
If I may go,
I think
yes, in Bali's good. Yeah.
Things that the life space of the insurance industry started looking at is creating a balance between funeral policies and life policies. What we had seen was with COVID, we needed to shift the conversation more towards risk, and not only to focus on funeral. South Africa, especially within the Black community, there was a lot of emphasis around funeral policies, where people took funeral policies. However, I think with COVID, we realized that there is life post-death. And we needed to then help our community to understand that and to plan for that. And therefore, there needed to be a lot of engagement, a lot of communication, and a lot of emphasis on risk, on risk products, so that much as people, have, and they make provision for funeral, it is also very important that they also make provision for life post-death, because post-death, we leave families behind, and somebody needs to pay for the, to sustain the families post-death, and we're starting to see the shift.
Right. And Mali, you were joining in.
I couldn't agree more with Prudence. And bringing it closer to corporates, we are now starting to see that the acceptance that this virus is not going anywhere. How do we move forward with it? Because it is becoming an endemic rather than a pandemic. And you're seeing corporates reviewing their policies, and the buzzword now is the new ways of working. How do we go back to office? Because whilst virtual worked, there is that social element that is missing, especially if people are going through that trauma. You need people, you need the support. And how do we make sure that whilst we protect ourselves and make sure that we don't contract the virus, we slowly move to normalcy? So we're seeing organizations going back to work. It's a hybrid. Some are back at work full-time. Some are still working from home full-time. But there is the transition and preparing employees for the future and making sure that we move forward. And it is critical because we're seeing the impact of COVID as South Africans. If you look at the rate of employment, last time I spoke to you, I think it was sitting at 32%.
Yeah.
Today, the average unemployment rate is 35%, and the youth unemployment rate is 65.5%. And this is the future of the country. It's graduates. It's not just people who have the senior certificates only. They are graduates. They can't find employment. The little that was there just disappeared overnight because of COVID. So there's a lot that is going into private sector as well as the public sector, and encouraging entrepreneurship. But people just need to get out and get some work done so that the economy starts improving again.
Yes. And I was wondering, what the actuaries are doing. How were they, the working out now life insurance policies and so on? Because yes, Prudence mentioned, the word risk. And I know that it's something that insurance agencies don't really like to do. They don't like to take risks, so perhaps that's someone that I'm going to have to have on the show, an actuary. I'm right? The actuarial science person is an actuary for you people, for insurance persons. So yeah, how are you working out risk these days within a pandemic? How's that working for you? So, but it's a thought, and now that we are stepping back out into living, there are celebrations going on and events happening, and people are just going to have to, bear in mind they're in a pandemic and follow the protocols. So it shifts me to the celebration of Freedom Day, which we also chatted about last year. So it's amazing that a year has come and gone already. It's the 27th of April, and the year is 1994. And I always remember that date because that I was in the final months of pregnancy with my son. So I always remember, you know, hopping up and down and then thinking, Peter, what are you doing? You know, so yeah, but it was fun times for all of us watching it on CNN and you know, just crying and so on for you all. So Prudence, I understand that you were in the thick of it. So perhaps you'd like to share, you know, that particular journey, being in Soweto and then moving forward to 1994 and freedom.
It was undescribable. You know, it was there was a hype in Soweto like you cannot imagine. You know, there were queues and people were just I think there was excitement, there was massive expectations. The people had massive dreams, both communicated and uncommunicated.
Oh dear, our friend the technology glitch has stepped in. So is MBALI still with us? Yes, can you pick up while we see if we can get Prudence sorted?
Yes, most definitely. Yes, I fully agree that the excitement was just out of this world. Having to see democracy coming into action and
can you guys
what we... Yes, we can, Prudence.
Okay, yes. Welcome back. We lost you there for a minute.
Sorry. You know,
that's okay.
Load shedding in my part of the world. So
I've heard. That's all right. So I've heard. But MBALI, do you want to let Prudence continue then? We can do that. You continue, Prudence. Oh no. Okay, we're going to play this by ear. You go ahead, MBALI.
Okay. Yes, it was just that excitement, the expectations, to an extent that maybe the expectations were too high. And we set the bar too high for our government. Which is why, Prudence, we're having a problem right now because of the load shedding. We're having a problem with a serious problem.
What is that? Because it caused us not to get Pearl Makubeni the other day on the link up because it turned out to be load sharing time. What is that?
Yes, it's an issue with power generation. So the infrastructure is failing, and you will just wake up and it will be announced that this power station failed, therefore we will be load shedding. So we take turns. So I had my turn just before the show started, and as we were getting ready, Prudence said to me, guess what, I've just started load shedding. Which again talks to the opportunities going in the future because you look at now solar, we have all the sun in South Africa or in Africa as a whole. Why don't we use that? Why do we depend on coal and diesel to generate power? So that is one of the things. So that's one of the expectations, that there was this high expectation that this government is just going to wave the magic wand and every single individual will be wealthy and the rest is history. Right. And it didn't really happen that way. But the good thing with democracy is that you get an opportunity to give the government feedback. You vote for your government, you vote your government in, and you give them feedback on the things that are not going well. The downside of it are the protests, because when people start protesting, you cannot control them. You get instances where they start destroying the little that you have,
Yeah.
which is not ideal. But moving on from the load shedding and the expectations from the government, right now talking about the 28th celebration of Freedom Day, which is next Wednesday. There isn't much hoo-ha about it, Peter, because we had a severe storm in one of the provinces, which is my home province, unfortunately,
Wow.
KwaZulu-Natal. There was the severe storm last Wednesday, lost over 450 lives. The count up to now. More than 200 people still missing. 14,000 people's homes washed away. It's a disaster. So the government, we came out of the COVID-19 national state of disaster on the 5th of April. And on Sunday, we went back to the national state of disaster because of those storms.
Wow.
So all hands are on deck. Everybody is just thinking of KwaZulu-Natal, raising funds, sending rescue teams to KwaZulu-Natal. It is heartbreaking to see the rescue teams digging people, using the dogs to sniff as to where they are, seeing people being interviewed. It really gives you goosebumps. So I think this year's focus will go into every South African contributing the little they have in helping KwaZulu-Natal to come off this disaster. It's estimated in over $1 million. I'm not going to quote the rent. The cost, and it's not the total cost yet. It is the estimated, and they still counting. But the estimated cost at the moment is exceeding about 10 billion already.
What? Okay. What is the weather? Because these are the types of questions that we ask.
It's global warming.
Oh, okay.
It's global because that province doesn't get rain at this time of the year.
Wow.
We're going into winter now. It's autumn, so the Gauteng province where Prudence is, and KwaZulu-Natal, and some other provinces don't get rain in autumn and winter. They get rain in summer. I'm in Cape Town, I get rain in winter. So rain is more expected in my province. But because of global warming, you're seeing all these drastic weather conditions. That's just the other day, Botswana, I don't know if you know the country, our neighboring country. Botswana never had snow in their history. Early this week, Botswana had snow.
Yes. How do you prepare for something like that? You know,
because you've never seen snow, you don't even have a cloud. Because it's forever hot. You get people from the West coming here in winter and complaining it's so hot. But because it's the cold we know, we think it's cold. And all of a sudden you wake up, you're covered in snow. So, and you are washed away in storms. And so it's a serious topic. It is a really serious topic.
Yeah. It's something that we're going to have to take a look at as you know, time progresses, because climate change is a reality. You know, but I mentioned Pearl earlier. Prudence, welcome back. I'm not sure if we have her really, or because she's between and all right. She's having load sharing issues, so we're going to have to work around that. But I'm sorry to hear about your birth province, you know, because one of the questions I was going to ask is, what is the weather like there now, not knowing that this took place? Because I was, you know, watching something and they mentioned going into winter, and I thought, oh yeah, they're in the southern hemisphere. You know, July is winter, not summer, like the northern. So it's something that's also very, very different, and also the time difference as well. You know, so like Prudence said, is it morning there, with you
it's
right
afternoon.
now?
It's
Yeah.
actually 10 to 5 in the afternoon.
Right, exactly. So those are things that
I'm
you always
preparing for
have to.
supper.
You're right, and I'm going to get ready for lunch. So that's interesting. But one of the things, though, MBALI, that I was watching on SABC was the land grabbing issue. Where are they with that now? Because I know that that is one of the concerns that came out of the whole, idea from, we are now running our government and things are going to change. And that was one of the issues that people were quite happy about, that they would be owning their own land and, but that is taking a while to. What's happening with that particular issue now, land grabbing?
It's still ongoing, and it's actually is part of the biggest problem with these floods, because there is no science that goes into where people are building. They're building in low-lying areas. The slightest of rain that comes, they're washed away with the nearby river, because it's informal structures. They're not strong enough. They're in the wrong areas. There is no engineering work or architecture that went into where they are building. So it is going on. The government is trying to build houses for people, but people are migrating from rural areas to urban areas. The more the government is building the houses, the more people are migrating from the rural areas, because everybody wants to move to the greener pastures. There's even a scheme where the government has put a scheme where they give people a grant to start farming, because people in rural areas have land and they can farm. And if the government can help you, can boost you financially to start farming, there is this thinking or theory that they then stay in the rural areas and focus on farming and generate income from that. But even that is not convincing people to stay in rural areas. They're still migrating to the urban areas. So the land grabbing is happening, and it is happening quite fast. And there are bodies, I won't call them political parties because they don't themselves political parties, some of them. Yes. And there are some political parties that encourage it. So imagine the severity of the issue, that if you now have politicians being involved in this, it's just uncontrollable in some instances.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a serious problem.
Yeah, I remember, hearing one of the people interviewed said that, but the land has been here for decades. No one has used it or claimed it or whatever, so they're putting it to good use. So what do you say when that happens? Because. And it was apparently, they were talking a lot of years that this land was just lying idle. And when people need land and so it's hard. Life is hard. And it's so hard keeping up with you and your load sharing, Prudence. That must be so annoying.
In and out, I know.
I can't be.
Those are just some of those challenges that we are faced with, I suppose.
Yeah, and you just work with it. But how does one be productive, especially if they load share in the working hours? I can't begin to understand that. But we're going to have you guys back. Yeah.
You get to a point where you start investing in your own, and it's quite costly to invest in
your solar
backup.
Right.
Yes. And because it's on demand, the turnaround times are too long, and the prices has just shot up because everybody now wants a power backup in their household.
Yeah.
But going back to the land issue, there is true, Peta, in what people are saying, that you walk out and you look at the massive land that to a man on the street, it's just wasted land because it's lying there and it's doing nothing. And then there is an issue that the wealth is sitting with a very small percentage of South African. And unfortunately, it's of a particular color that owns that wealth. And the hope that the 27th of April 1994 brought was that we're going to start sharing the wealth. And the sharing of wealth happened, but with a very small group again. So there are people now pointing at all these wine farms in Stellenbosch. Why can't we get that land? They just go and they just settle there. But there is a legal title deed of that land.
Of course.
It's you don't know what to do.
Yeah. So how are you?
I guess just to add on what MBALI is saying, Peter, is that you know, the socio-economic challenges of South Africa are a lot more, are not as simple as land and land grabbing. I think these things are structural, and therefore we need to deal with them structurally. And the fact that we have also seen an influx of, you know, our neighbors into the space, I guess that also kind of like created or exacerbated some of the challenges that we are facing. Because to the extent that the government is trying to allocate, you know, houses to some of the local South Africans, it becomes very difficult because for every, you know, one house that they give, there's another 10 people that are waiting for houses. So, you know, it's a never ending and the issue is structural, and we therefore need to create a proper structure for us to be able to deal with it. And it's unfortunate that while we were trying to deal with it, we were then faced with a number of other challenges that we need to then, you know, resolve while we're resolving all these other things that we inherently, you know, inherited. So it's a double-edged sword, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining me today, ladies. I want to wish you happy Freedom Day next week in advance. I know that there's still a lot of work to be done, and I know the task ahead might not be easy, but for the rest of the world, when we look at where you've come from and where you are today, we still can't help but smile and feel some measure of pride in what you've accomplished so far. And it's only been, what, 28 years, you know? And so, yeah, so you've got a long way to go yet. But you be safe and be well, and we will connect again, okay? Thank you
so much.
Okay, take care.
And we wish you guys all the best as well.
Thank you, Prudence. Thank you very much. Chatting with Prudence Tipe and MBALI KHUMALO from South Africa. You learn so much when you reach out and you connect, and you realize that, you know, yeah, we might live in different places, but a lot of the issues are still the same. A lot of challenges are still the same. So it's always good. That's why I like the link up. And I'm going to like linking up with this next guest, an old friend, Ian SKUNG Young. Where did that SKUNG Young come from? Well, we're going to find out when we come back. going to beg for you to keep the music under there a little bit. It's too sweet. Seriously, one of my favorites for many, many reasons. But as I was telling, Ian, I love. Welcome back to the Link Up. It seems as though that sometimes, you know, Mr. Murphy is that the one with the law, likes to rear his presence and his head when we really and truthfully don't want him to, and anything that can go wrong will. So that's, you know, we really would like to apologize for that break just now, where we certainly could not bring anything to you, but keeping fingers crossed that we're up and running again, thanks to our technical team, both in the gallery and also at Master Control. So we certainly hope that we'll be able to bring you this chat with Ian, SKUNG, young Alleyne. Ian, I hope you're right. You know, I think it's the shares that did it the last time, you know, man. All right. Yeah. Yeah, he's going to turn on his audio. Keeping fingers crossed that it all works out well this time. Not hearing him? All right. We're going to see if we can get Ian sorted out. But remember, I did say that I'm going to share a little bit of my chat with Minister, well, not Minister White, it's going to take a while for us to say Senator John King, last week with our season of emancipation. And it's going to be bigger and more in terms of events this year. And so we've got part of that chat that I had with him, and perhaps while we get Ian sorted out, we can share that with you. So here's my chat that I had last week with Senator John King about our new season of independence. Well, emancipation.
Slavery. They will no longer show it tolerance. It is over, Jackie, and the enslavers now know this. Generations to come will know that we show the world how we feel about slavery. They will know that we honor ourselves by demanding respect and reclaiming our dignity. That, Buster, is not enough. It is more than enough for men and women to die for freedom, for the truth. Dignity, my friend, is the finest fabric with its rock-worn soul for its homeward journey. It is time to bring the regiments together. We must stick to the plan. Rally round Baileys, secure the perimeter, run them out of Sincera.
Thank you to the NCF for that. And thank you to Senator King for joining us today, as today we take a look at the Buster Rebellion 206 years later. The anniversary of the rebellion, Senator King, is always the start of our season of emancipation. Thank you so much for joining me today. Tell me, what are you going to be focusing on for this particular season?
Okay, well, first let me say thank you very much, Peter, for having us on. This year, we're definitely going to be focusing a lot on the educational aspects of the season of emancipation. Oftentimes, we get this sense that it's all about the celebration and, you know, the crop over aspects which are part of the season of emancipation, and we tend to focus a lot on that. Deliberately this year, though, we are ensuring that various generations of Barbadians have the opportunity to have access to a little bit more serious discourse on the rebellion, on emancipation itself, on all of the things that we want as a new republic going forward. Because, you know, we always say, if you're moving to, we've moved to be in a new republic, then there also has to be a new national consciousness that goes along with that movement. And the season of emancipation this year will focus heavily on events and programs and projects that lead towards building that new national consciousness. And it first starts with us being able to identify with ourselves and place a value on the events that brought us thus far.
I'm really glad to hear that. And just let me put in a little plug here for the Link Up and also for CBC, because you know that over the years, we've always been at the forefront of getting that information out there, and getting in contact with the resource persons who can bring that information to life. And that has always been one of my criticisms, actually, that, you know, people hear emancipation and so on, but what was it really? What were the times like at that time, and how did what happened then impact us now? And that's one of the things that I want to look at today with Dr. Carter when we take a look at the bus of rebellion, because there's so many names who've been left off, you know, history's page, I think, when we talk about the bus of rebellion. Yes, we talk about the Right Excellent General Bussa, but there were so many more from many plantations across the island, not just Bailey's.
Agreed, Peter. And one of the things that I'm also trying to get people to understand, that when we talk about the season of emancipation, we also have to look at it in its much broader sense. Right. Not just in terms of the emancipation of the then slave class in Barbados, but as we go forward in this 2022, there's some habits, there's some things that we as Barbadians do that we also need to emancipate ourselves from, you know, and we must begin to see it in its very broadest terms as we go forward. But I think that this year, and please excuse me if I sound overly excited about it, the truth is I am, and I'm also on location at the Division of Culture right now, so if you hear any noise in the background, there's a hyper activity happening. And that's fantastic. It's already started with a visual arts exhibition, which is being held in the foyer as we speak. It's called Coming to Self. And a number of Barbadian artists have already placed some fantastic work there. And I want to take the opportunity to encourage people who are watching the program now that if they have a minute to spare and they pass through, they'll see an exhibition that will stir your soul. And get the juices flowing for what is to come for the rest of the season.
What did you say is the name of it? I'm sorry, what's the theme?
Coming to Self.
I'm going to steal that for one of my themes for the Link Up, if you don't mind. I love it.
You can steal it. You can steal it.
Coming to Self.
All Barbadians should steal it now.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect for because, again, what I said, all that happened before impacts who and, you know, what we do and so on now.
It does. Yes. And I want to stress all the time too that this is a Barbadian season of emancipation, because oftentimes we sometimes begin to think that this is only about persons of African descent, but it's for everyone. And the emancipation of things, as I mentioned earlier, is about all of us. And yes. who and what is it we want to create going forward. So we have this exhibition that's going on. Throughout the day, Peter, there are going to be performances throughout the mall. They've consented to allow us to use various spaces there so that their shoppers and whoever have that experience of the beginning of the season of emancipation, bring some life to it. We look forward to that. And also there's a press conference that will kick off this afternoon at 3:30 in the food court itself of the Sky Mall. And there you will have some speeches and again some performances. All in all, the season itself has a number of events. It starts today, it ends on August 31st. So you can see the length of time that we're going to be celebrating who we are and who we want to be. And this is going to have a number of lectures, You have a family day that we're going to be recognizing. We have Marcus Garvey Day you're going to be recognizing. We have our very own Jackie Orville Day that we're going to be recognizing. But as soon as the press conference is finished today, we're going to release the actual calendar of events
Oh,
so that
wonderful.
everyone can have it, and they can
Yes.
pick and choose what events they want to go to. But I want to be encouraging families, and I'm going to stress on that all the time. And when I say families, I don't mean just your blood family, your communities, your friends, your work colleagues, you're all families. I want you all to come out and support all of the events that are going to be on, because this is where we begin to bring our people together to share in a common experience that I think is secondary to none. And I believe that this is the first step in this season of emancipation, of us creating a season that other persons from around the Caribbean, and I dare say the continent, and probably North and South America, would want to join us as we go forward in this experience. And there's no better time than now, when Barbados has a certain amount of presence in the international world. And I think this is really the time when we get to show the world who we are.
Yeah, and you know that there are some people in this country, and I'm not just talking about individuals, you know, by the wayside. I'm talking about people that would surprise you. Who says that Barbados has no culture?
I know. I've heard it for many years. It hurts my stomach. But that tells you, Peter, a little bit about the bang up job that was done on our people.
Exactly.
And these are what you're faced with now is dealing with the residue of that mental slavery,
Shackles.
of that psychological, those shackles. And this season of emancipation is all about breaking those. Now, the process is not going to be easy,
No.
and it's not going to be done, quickly. But you have to cut away at it, bit by bit by bit by bit. And this is what the season of emancipation is all.
No small feat. I can tell you, I know that you've got your work cut out for you. I'm happy to hear that it encompasses all Barbadians. So we're going to learn as well about the journey of the Barbadians of Indian descent.
That's right.
You know, I think that part of their culture has alienated them from the rest of us, and I'm happy to see that they're opening up more and more. And so we're getting to find out, more about them. And certainly that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to in finding out and learning more about their culture. We have some Indigenous people who are here.
Right. That's right. We have 100 on the island, approximately 100.
And
Right.
it's the best kept secret ever, So this is a perfect opportunity for us to really get to know and to embrace each other, not literally because we're still in COVID, but each other as a people. And yourself now, as a person who has been part of the cultural landscape for so long, I want to know where we are at with the beginning. And I'm talking about the young minds, the little ones. How is this season being drafted and explained to them? And how are they going to be participating? Are you all doing liaising with the Ministry of Education, or doing it cross ministries, or is it only going to be the Ministry of Culture?
Well, even it is cross ministries, but it is also looking at some of the other entities that fall underneath the Division of Culture. So, for instance, the National Library Service is going to be having an event which is catered towards our young people, where there will be storytelling and there will be things that speak to the African experience. and to our own Barbadian experience also, in that gives them the opportunity to participate. There are also going to be visual art events where you will see art from some of our young people in schools and different things like that. And then there are the ones that I spoke about earlier, which are going to be geared towards the families, which encourage the adults along with their children to come out. There's a culinary event that's going to happen in May, on the 21st of May. And at that, that's where we get to share the diversity within Barbados. It's an international day for cultural diversity. And we're going to be using food as that thing that brings people together. And when you spoke earlier about, having that East Indian experience, those are the type of things where you get hands-on learning in terms of,
Nice.
you can see how things that have been preparation of foods and different things and sampling of them. So our kids are going to be encouraged to not only come to these events, but to also view the lectures and the different things that are going to be happening on social media. And again, as you mentioned earlier, CBC is always in the front of helping us. And I know that all the things that we're going to be streaming also, that you guys will help us to get that message out there. So
Most
it's all
definitely.
encompassing. It's
Most
all
definitely.
encompassing for everyone.
I'm going to hold on to you for a little bit longer, if you don't mind.
That's okay.
Because for the first time in, I don't know how many years, AgriFest is actually going to be falling within the season of emancipation.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of a pandemic, but it's kind of worked itself, and when you're talking about us as a people, you're talking about an identity. And part of our identity is our black belly sheep. And,
Yes.
We've got an interesting amalgamation between two countries happening with the Barbados and Guyana agreement and so on. So lots of lovely things that are different, but I think important are happening within this particular season. So we're going to talk about that when we come back.
Okay.
I enjoyed that chat that we had with Senator King last week on the 206th anniversary of the Bussa Rebellion. And we're going to have many more chats like that during the season of emancipation. I said independence, but emancipation started last week with the Bussa Rebellion, the anniversary of that, and it's going to end on the 31st of August, so it's an extended season this year. And lots of interesting things are in there, and we're going to be sharing them with you as the season progresses. Now, we're going to keep our fingers crossed and hope that we get an opportunity to chat, for real, with Ian SKUNG Young Alleyne. So, I'm not going to talk about his shades in case that's the thing that jinxed us the last time. I will make no mention, but I will say welcome, Ian. Nice to have you join us on the Link Up.
Thanks for having me.
Yay, I can hear you. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. So let's go back to come forward. For those who don't know, Ian Alleyne, musician extraordinaire, very, very talented for years, from his youth. Those days at BCC. Let's go back there, Ian. Where it started, please.
What do you want to know?
Okay, Now, where did it begin? Did you always know that, you know, you had that ability to, you know, make that instrument literally talk?
Well, really and truly, my dad and his three brothers were all musicians, and they would play all the time, and I was enamored by their playing, and I was like, I gotta choose an instrument. And the coolest of all of them was the guitarist, my uncle Orville. So I gravitated to the guitar, but I started actually on drums. I was playing
Really?
drums for a while. Yeah, I started on drums. Was playing drums for a while. Actually, Peter Weeks, my neighbor, he's the guy who got me started on the guitar. And
Wow.
he started on drums first, so I followed him on drums, and then he started on guitar, and I followed him on guitar. And then from then I went to community college. I met David Jordan, who opened my eyes to other chords. I was playing like majors and minor sevens and that stuff. And he was telling me, oh, you know, they got 11s and they got 13s and they got sharp 5s, flat 5. And I was like, wow. So that's where it started really getting serious when I got to community college.
Right.
And I met you.
Yes, 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 it's quite true.
Yes, yes.
We were part of a really cool band, actually.
Yep.
I always say communique, but somebody said to me, isn't it communicate? I said, no, we were communique.
Community.
You know,
Correct,
and the same David Jordan. We had David Shepard. The late Boo Husbands was part of that band as well.
Correct. Marilyn.
You know, Marilyn, yes, that's right. She's in England now, and we were good. We were good. And I get in arguments with people all the time when I said that we gave you your name, Hog It.
Yes, yes. That was from an actual tune that we were playing, remember? They
Right.
were supposed to play a part.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Yes,
know,
yes,
but
yes.
people said, no, man. I said, yep, we were the ones, you know. I can't remember exactly who. It wasn't me, but I think it might have been Boo.
I think it might have been Boo too.
Yeah, because you won't stop. Marilyn and I trying to get back in to sing, and you still there, so you know. And it was, yeah. I think it was. Boo.
I think it was Boo, yeah.
Yeah, but then leaving BCC and getting involved in the actual crop over scene, you know, the music industry. How did that happen?
Well, it went through a few things before that. When I started, being professional, I was in a band called Nightlife. That's with Philip Forrester.
Yes.
The late Randy Levine, who left us last year, and keyboard player Mr. Blackett.
Right.
We used to do like 7 nights a week, and Gabby used to sing with us a couple nights. And then one night he came to us and said, "Would you guys be interested in playing for me in the studio? Eddie Grant wants to record me. I have 2 songs, Hit It and Boots." We said, "Sure." And that's how that started with the soca stuff. And while we were there, it came a point where Nicholas was playing. Me and Nicholas was playing for Eddie, and he asked us to go on tour with him. So we went on tour with him as well. So then we came back and we formed our own bands. Nicholas was with Second Avenue, I was with Axis, and that's where that whole, you know, nightclub and band thing started.
Right. Ian, when you look back at those days, you know, do you look at what we have now? Even, all right, let's forget the pandemic. Even before the pandemic, we didn't have places and opportunities for bands to thrive. How did that change? And I'm not talking about the pandemic. I'm talking about just before the,
like when we came back from Eddie Grant, like I said, Nicholas had Second Avenue and they had Axis. That's 1988, 1987, 88. And bands were thriving. I mean, there were bands everywhere.
Everywhere.
Like you come through St. Lawrence Gap, and the bands from the time you get with the corner right to the top. And it just 92, 93 saw them decline rapidly. It just disappeared, you know.
Became DJs, and you know.
Yeah, it's part economical, but it's also something else. I don't know what that other thing is. Because I can understand a proprietor not wanting to pay a band money. I can understand that. But what about the pull that a band has? There's nothing like a live band to pull people into the place, you know what I mean?
Yep. I don't either, and it was a question that I said that I had to ask you because even within the music and partyscape of North America, bands are still popular. Yeah, you have your DJs, but you have DJs who are affiliated with bands. Also, exactly. So where did we change? Where did we move off? You know, and perhaps it's financial. I don't know.
Yeah, it's part that, but I don't think it's only that. It has to be more than that. So
I think
definitely part of that.
Yeah, I think it's more than that. But what surprised me then was the fact that I heard then that you were writing.
Yeah, well, you remember, I was writing at community college. Remember, I wrote a song. I started to write a song.
We
used to do this song. We used to do this song every day. Me and David. We on the outside looking in. You remember that?
Yes.
You don't remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, many years later, I started to write an album. The idea was to write an album. And I kind of took some elements of that to write a song I have on my first album called In Your Love. If you check it, you'll see that some of it is kind of similar, like the start and stuff.
Okay.
And then I wrote that album, Against the Grain. And that was 2000 that came out. Then I wrote another album in 2005, Relatively Unknown. And while that is all going on, I'm also writing calypso songs, soca songs, you know?
That's it.
I wrote for TC, I wrote for Adrian Clark, I wrote for Natalie. You know, I wrote for quite a few people, like, under the radar kind of thing, because a lot of people didn't know. That's one of the main reasons why I put together this album anthology, because after my moderate success for 2019, where I kept with the song So Happy placed fourth in the Soca Monarch competition, I decided, people started playing some of my other songs and they were like, is this new? Is this new? I was like, you know what? Let me just put everything on one album so people can just go to the album and see what SKUNG has.
All right. Now you hear the SKUNG. Now I know a lot of people gonna want to know where that SKUNG came from. You know, where did that name come from?
That's my oldest nickname. I've told that story so many times recently. Because when I was 4 years old, I used to go down the road in Britain. I was born in Britain. And there was, Miss Reese had some old cars in front of the house. I used to go into this black one in particular and go like, you know, pretend I started it, you know. And one of the older guys named me that name. Best named me that name. Yeah.
So it's a car sound.
It's a car sound. It started.
No, I like that.
So,
I like that.
And the reason I chose that was to differentiate the Ian music from the SKUNG music. Because Ian music is not soca. Ian music is more guitar, funky kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the SKUNG music is soca and calypso.
So, Earth, Wind and Fire, Brothers Johnson, that kind of funkadelic kind of sound.
Yeah.
Big afros and bell-bottom pants, man. I can see them on the platform shoes. I keep telling people that I'm a dinosaur, but you know, I really am. Now that I'm looking back at it.
But yes, because that's the kind of music that Comedy was playing.
Yes,
You know,
that's the music we did.
All that music.
Yeah. Sweet. So how music has changed over the years, though, Ian, in terms of moving the living bodies and so on and mixing them with what I call the equipment, you know, the sampling and all of that sort of stuff.
Technology. It's the same 12 notes. But they're being manipulated differently, you know. And a lot of it is exciting. Some of it can be a little drab, but you know, most of it is exciting. So it's not as it's gotten any worse as far as the ability to make music. But some people just choose different paths, you know, how they make their music and the sound of their music and the look of how they portray their music. It's a whole, you know, potpourri, so to speak.
Yeah, and what they can do with it now, you know, is amazing. How they can go about the whole editing process and putting it together is, but I still,
Yes, it's faster.
yeah, it's fast, you know,
But
but
it's still fast. I mean, with the equipment, the equipment is one thing. I mean, you can have all the fancy equipment and still have a live band. So the choice between live and technology, as far as you know, drum machines and samplers and stuff, you can have an amalgam as well. You can mix it too. You can have strictly live using the same technology. So there's no, you can choose to do what you want to do.
all right. Well, let's talk about, you know, those young ones. When I say young ones, the teens and so on coming out of BCC now. You know, what are your thoughts on what we're going to do with that talent? Because we're not utilizing it. We really aren't. But I'm going to ask you that when we come back from break. We're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
We're chatting with SKUNG Young, Ian Alleyne, who's just released his anthology of music, and we're really, really pleased about that. We're going to talk about that in just 2 seconds, but I just like to pick his brain sometimes because I know that he, you know, he has the pulse, his hand on the pulse of what's happening in the music scene. And I was watching some of the younger musicians, some who have come out of the community colleges program, and they're amazing. But then I think to myself, you know, they're going to have to leave this place, go out of here, because, you know, Barbados just does not have, I think, what can help them grow. You want to change my mind on that?
Well, one thing is for sure, it's easier to get your music out without leaving Barbados.
Okay.
In my time, there was no internet, there was no social media, so they don't have that issue. I've seen quite a few talented guys and ladies as well. So, I mean, I think you have to do is write your own music. I mean, get music. Being able to play is one thing. I mean, you can make a living with that too, but you have to go places with that. If you write music, you make your own music. That can leave here before you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you can be home and you can be doing set up here, making music, and then I touch the button. It's going to Japan. It's going to China. It's going to Russia. It can go anywhere. That's the point I'm making. Is it can go anywhere in seconds, in split seconds. Sorry.
Right.
So there's no reason to fear, really. I mean, I would encourage everyone, all these young musicians, to spend just as much time in your room by yourself with your chops as you spend with other musicians, because playing with other musicians is really that. That's where you know when you're locked into the music. I mean, you can have a great facility on your instrument, yeah, but when you get with other instrumentalists, you have to lock in, and you only get that from practicing that. You don't get that from listening to a tape, slowing it down and speeding it up and all that. You don't get that from that. You get that from actually being with humans.
Right.
Humans is really vital to that.
So now you've taken it a step further, and that split second time leaving here and going to places like Spotify and iTunes. To those who are not really, you know, au fait with that particular scene, explain it to us. How does a musician in Barbados who's making music in his home in St. Philip then get that album to a place like Apple, iTunes, and Spotify?
That's really simple. I mean, you just upload it to the site. There's a time limit. I mean, and it goes there and it's monitored. You can monitor it as well, or you can have your you can be signed to a record company, like let's say CRS for instance, and they can monitor it, and you can, everything that happens to every stream and everything that happens as far as that is concerned is logged. So it's quite very much more simple than before, where you have to rely on people telling you what happened. But you can actually see real time. You can look at the graph and see who has streamed your music in any part of the world, down to the city.
Seriously? Okay.
Yep.
Is as specific as that?
Yep. It's really as specific as that.
Wow. Well, I know that you only just released it, so perhaps those numbers and so on haven't come out yet. But have you taken a look to see so far who's logged on?
I took a look like a week into it. So I mean, I saw that at the time I saw that there were a few downloads, which is rare nowadays. Many people don't download nowadays. People just stream, getting the car display, But there have been some of those. That was like a week into it, so I haven't checked recently. But
right.
I'm hoping that when I look again, it's positive.
I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be. And I went on and I saw the music that was there, and I said, okay, because the Spotify thing and then the iTunes, and you need the Apple product and so on. So that for me, but the Spotify, I will have to do that. Definitely, because
there are quite a few others. There's Spotify, there's Deezer, there's Amazon Music. Those are the most popular
well, okay,
ones.
right.
My music is on 80 sites.
Nice.
About 80 sites. So that shows you how many there are. There are more than 80 sites, but mine's on about 80 sites.
All right. And
but
now,
I must also say
uh-huh.
that Ian's music is also on Spotify, on all those platforms as well. The two albums, Against the Grain and Relatively Unknown.
Yeah, EYAN, guys.
EYAN.
Yeah, definitely. So, crop overs are coming. Is SKUNG Young participating?
Well, I'm in the studio right now trying to finish 2 songs I started for 2020, but then nothing happened, so they were like halfway. Okay. So I gotta finish those.
What are you notice I'm now getting nosy. So what kind of themes are y'all going to be looking at as entertainers for 2022?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of songs that, well, not a lot. I'm seeing a few songs that hint at us now back being able to congregate again, go back outside. So I saw a song called The Outside. I think that's Edwin. And a song called, I think Blood has a song called They Let Me Out. All hinting at, the pandemic. I tend to steer from those things. I like to be the human, so my songs are gonna have to do something different.
Right.
A different vibe, Because I think that one thing that remains, regardless of what happens, pandemic or no pandemic, are themes like togetherness and love and partying and meeting people, those things still remain,
Yeah. And what I like about their song So Happy was the happy theme.
The positive theme.
Yeah, exactly. So perhaps they're going to be looking at things that which uplift a little bit more, make you happy, make you, breathe. Just get out there and breathe.
I think it's gonna be a lot of the music is gonna be celebratory. So we have to celebrate the fact that we're back out and we're able to make music. Period. We're able to play to people. You know what I mean? Because the first 8 months of the pandemic was nothing. I mean, artists. I heard some stories, man. Let me tell you.
Yeah, same.
Artists were making zero income. So
yeah,
it's a chance to celebrate for
right.
sure.
What do you think the fraternity has learned now on this side of the pandemic? What do you think is the takeaway from what they experienced?
I think one of the things that definitely had to have thought about is squirreling away a few eggs You know, just in case. That to me is just hands down. You had to have thought of that, you know, because when things go from whatever, let's say 60 miles an hour to zero, you gotta be like, whoa, you know, do I have anything that could keep me going for however long, you know?
Right.
That is a serious thing. So I think one of the things that should come out of it is that people look at their future, which is, I know people say you ain't got to put down, but at least put yourself in a position that, you know, you can handle yourself.
Right. And for me, is how more connected and close we are as a world. You know, that was one of the things. I mean, look at this show. We link up not only locally and regionally, but because of the technology, we connect with China. We're
anywhere in
all
the world, yeah.
over the world, you know. So it's the technology is there, and the lessons learned are there, and putting them together, and hopefully, if God forbid something like this happens again, that we won't be as caught napping as we were back in 2020.
And that's one of the things about Sunday night at my launch. All the guys that performed and the people that came out, it was a really good vibe. I mean, we were so happy to be out together having some fun. It was really, really good vibe, you know. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
Well, we are wishing you all of the best, and we're sending our viewers and whoever is listening to us straight to Spotify and to iTunes and the other ones you mentioned, the other music platforms. There's Amazon Music as well, and you can look for Ian, that's EYAN, or you can look for Skung Young. He's there, you know, and download or stream. Music's great. Talent is always good. Thank you so much, Ian. We're wishing you all the best. Please stay safe.
Thank you so much. At that.
Yeah, there you go. I caught myself calling you Nai, and before, you know, but it's just our names backwards.
Backwards.
Which is what we call each other. Nai and Ete.
That's what.
Yeah.
From 1979 until now.
Oh wow, that's a long time.
It's true.
It's a long time, but I'm so proud of you, my friend. You stay safe and stay well. Okay.
You too.
And thank you so much for joining us today on the Link Up. Apologies for the technical hiccups and so on, but next week TV8 will be bringing live coverage of the National Awards on Heroes Day at 10 o'clock. So the Link Up will be with you again on May the 5th, I think it might be. Yes, I think it might be May 5th. And so I'm wishing you have a great weekend this weekend. Enjoy it, be safe, and then I'm wishing you a safe and happy Heroes Day and Labor Day weekend, which is next weekend. So please, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for staying with us through all of the hiccups. But, you know, it was informative, and I thank our guests as usual. So take care. God bless.